KBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning once again, Uganda. My name is Julie Nantabamusisi, and like I mentioned earlier, we would be talking about the welfare of workers and in particular the relevance of minimum wage in Uganda. Now, during the Labor Day celebrations, the president pledged that he would awaken the conversation of minimum wage. Please be reminded that the minimum wage bill was first tabled in 2013 and was passed by Parliament in the year 2019, but at that time was rejected by the president, giving different reasons, some of which was to protect investors and not to discourage investors from engaging in Uganda's economy. But in this particular year, Honorable Alinaitwe Rakajura, who is an aspirant of the NRM Vice Chairperson, Western Uganda, retabled the bill, and we're still looking forward to seeing how it all pans out. But it's encouraging that on this year's Labor Day celebrations, the president himself pledged to awaken this particular conversation in an effort to protect the security and rights of workers in Uganda. Now, in studio with me is Mr. Juma Mwamula. He is the Vice Chairman General NOTU, and he's also the Uganda Private Teachers Secretary, General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union, pardon me, Uganda Private Teachers Union General Secretary. And he's in studio with us to enlighten us about this conversation, and that is the relevance of minimum wage as we focus on the welfare of workers in Uganda. Once again, good morning. The conversation is open for you to be a part of, so feel free to send your WhatsApp message to 0709-602-592 and be a part of this conversation. Good morning, Mr. Juma Mwamula.
A very good morning to you, my sister, and to the crew members here. Very good morning to our viewers out there. Juma Mwamula, like you said, General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union, but very importantly for now, Vice Chairman General and National Organization of Trade Unions, not.
Welcome back. Indeed, happy to be here with you. Welcome back from Nakapiripirit.
Thank you so much, and I want to welcome everybody really who braved that long journey. Gladly, we are so happy that it was a smooth ride from Kampala to the venue grounds.
Indeed,
it was all tarmac.
As the president mentioned, yes, that you flew.
We just flew. By the way, you are especially trade unions and representatives of employers left Kampala very late. But even then, people were able to get there on time, all because of the good roads. And we want to say thank you to the regime.
Amazing. Speaking of the fact that you left late, I understand on the 30th of April, you had a meeting at State House with the president. And this was actually also talked about, hinted on by the representative of NOTU who gave the speech on behalf of NOTU at the Labor Day celebrations. What was discussed in that meeting?
First, we had a meeting on the 30th, which was the eve of the Labor Day celebrations, and that is something that we have always been pursuing right for some good time, asking that we could have earlier engagements for purposes of in-depth discussions. In our discussions, almost the issues that should have surfaced at the Labor Day speeches were raised. Among others was the question of minimum wage, the element of pay as you earn thresholds, and so many other things, particularly on the question of course, we talked about issues of minimum wage, pay, consideration of increasing pay as you earn threshold. As we speak today, it is 235,000 shillings. Any money is above that is taxed at 30%, pay as you earn. Our view is that if we are aiming to make the employers have a reasonable saving and have some money in their pockets for them to be able to have purchasing power, that threshold be increased. And our appeal is at least to 450. We are so glad that in the engagement, the president gave assurance that really he buys into that, whereas he did not give a firm confirmation on how much would be the threshold, but at least he appreciates that there is a need for review. And so he immediately promises that coming next month, June, we are supposed to have another engagement. And our opinion is that at that time he will have made all the possible consultations within his government state machineries, and therefore would be able to conclude on what is going to be the eventual pay-as-you-earn threshold. And for us, we think that this is a very good score for the Ugandans. Because if that money that you are earning as a salary is increased to the threshold, the amount at which your tax is increased, then that means that you have a base value that remains with you untaxed, and therefore that can be your money for dispensing in your day-to-day livelihood. That is a big score. The other thing that was discussed about was his commitment to provide support to workers' education and training. We now are developing a proposition that our continuous song of increased salaries at one time may have a limitation. Even then, sometimes that increase of salary does not make significant changes in people's welfare. Take, for example, if somebody is earning 500,000 shillings, which is the case for so many average Ugandans, and then you're increasing that salary, say, by 10%, that would mean only 550. So the 50,000 increment really may not be something very significant in terms of causing a change. And yet, in the outward, when you mention 10% increment, somebody would think that you have done a big score. So the approach now, on top of doing those appeals for increment of salaries, we want to go into rigorous work education and training for us to appreciate life the other way. We can start looking at that salary that we earn as a basis for us to think otherwise. So there are 4 packages of entrepreneurship, packages of business mind, business practice are going to be very core. So such that as you are here at UBC earning whatever you earn, you also consider other alternative incomes that should supplement your income here at UBC. So whatever you get here should only be counted as seed capital to help you develop your other side business. And at least through our engagement, from our engagement, there was a commitment for the government to do deliberate support towards that. And we are so thankful towards it. We think that it will go a long way really to change the lives of people. There are so many people who have over-challenged us, saying, in Kampala, when you look around, of those rich Mongols that we talk about, how many of them are directly employed by some authority? Actually, you end up seeing that most of them are self-employed, are really doing their own businesses. And therefore, the mind of really people doing their own business ventures is something very productive that we think can be helpful, first, to make a better life for the individuals directly, but also to create more employment opportunities.
You talk about those two, and allow me to take you a bit back, just for purposes of clarity to our viewer, to understand exactly what we're talking about. You talked about providing support for workers in training, and this is now in regards to value addition.
Very well.
While you work at UBC, you're receiving a training in some form of skill that will still add value to you for even after UBC.
Very well.
And then coming to the business ventures, are we looking at an arrangement like, for example, how the PDM is, but we bring it into the workplace setting? That type of
the principle was support to education and training. It could mean education in making you a better performer at your role here at UBC, the proficiency or professionalism, but also the element of other options of livelihood. So that all is going to be now the role of us as a national organization of trade unions to make those packages that fit to the need of our people. And we have already made an observation that the push for salaries alone in itself shall never be enough in satisfying the requirements and the needs of our people. We need alternative options, and part of the alternative options is alternative income sources. So that is why we are saying that we are going to encourage and emphasize elements of entrepreneurship promotion, elements of business mind, and then elements of on-job proficiency and professionalism for you to be the best that you can be. Of course, when you're the best that you can be, even your bargaining power here, even your relevance, your productivity, and eventually the incomes that you bring to the institution where you are earning, where you are working, increases. And that in itself can also be a basis for your increased pay. So those are some of the issues. The other thing, of course, there was a very rich discussion on the element of minimum wage. Until now, His Excellency thinks that we need to hold or go slow on the question of immediate fixing of a minimum wage.
Why
and
so?
His explanation looked to be a little bit scientific. First, he cautions that all big economies where workers have advanced the desire for very better pay without regard to the cost of production, employers of factories have been discouraged. He gave an example of the UK economy, which earlier on we started about as being one of the most industrialized economy in the world. Today, as we speak, UK is no longer talked about as the most industrial environment. Instead, we are seeing now a bigger emerger of industrial development in the Asian countries, China, Japan, and all that. And part of their advantage has been big population and therefore low labor. So somehow he says that whereas we need to have that high cost for labor, we must have sensitive regard to the overall production costs, such that this person putting up his or her factory really sees the value of sense for business. The other thing that was also brought along was the fact that as we speak today, we are being invaded by artificial intelligence and machine use. There are so many factories, there are so many industries that are replacing human labor by automated machines. One person only needed to be seated at one control center and is manning a factory that would actually be requiring over 1,000 people. So for us now to avoid people thinking that they would rather invest more into machinery to avoid the increasing need of people's wages, we need to go slow and have a conversation that is a win-win situation. In every push for fair wages, there is adequate involvement of the worker, the employer, and maybe the government. Worker, employer, the government, that we call a tripartite. And so for him, his committee even says that is a very good approach and it should be supported. And to us as trade unionists, of course, it may put aside the discussion of bargaining, which anyway brings about a better fare than even what a minimum wage would offer. Because in collective bargaining agreements, you're actually looking at what does it practically need for somebody to be able to offer his best at a workplace.
There was a suggestion of the minimum wage being a sector, where it's not a wholesome, but sector by sector. If at all journalists have a minimum wage of, say, 1 million, it should be so for all journalists in Uganda. If at all teachers are supposed to have a minimum wage of 1.5, it should be so for all teachers. What does the union think from that perspective?
That was a view that we presented as trade unionists, that if we are going into the subject of a minimum wage, we wish that it would be sectoral. Education sector will have its own, maybe agricultural sector will have its own, the domestic worker sector will have its own, and so on and so forth. He also appreciated the same. And that was the basis for which he said that we can even have a further discussion about this subject for us to understand all the other dynamics that relate to it. But overall, he cautioned the caution that I have just been sharing about the reservation, I mean, for us to be so cautious to avoid making labor very expensive and therefore impacting negatively on the cost of overall production, which can affect the rate of industrialization.
Now, staying there on making labor very affordable or avoiding to make it so expensive, he also talked about dealing with the issue of casual laborers. And in there, he purposed that he will do away with just the conversation of casual laborers to having contractual laborers. Now, if you talk about casual laborers, this is when we also think about the house helps. Does it mean that for me to have a house help at home, there should be a contract signed, stamped? What does it look like?
Very particularly the example that was brought was for the big factories that are operating in around Kampala. If you have ever done maybe investigation as a journalist, you could have observed that we have some factories here that employ over 1,000 people.
That's
but
true.
when you visit them, they will tell you only about 100 are our employees and the others are outsourced. So what they do is to get a Job Connect company that serves as an agent. That Job Connect company recruits people under their name and deploys them into a factory. So when anything happens to this worker who has been deployed by the Connect company, the employer here, the factory, says, we are not responsible for your welfare. Whereas they are the people who are offering the work, the tasks of what to do. They are the people who are paying the real wages, but they don't want to take any extra obligations, like, for example, paying for NSSF, paying for taxes, and any other incidentals. Like, for example, if somebody gets an accident, you don't have to complain to them because they claim you are not their employer. So in explicit statement, he said such is forbidden. And our view is that we should not see an employer anywhere around Uganda who is using agents to employ people. That was outlawed. We also do not expect anybody who continues to say that people are going to serve as casual workers just on that casual basis, even when they are actually working for a very long period of time. That has also been outlawed. So we are very thankful to that. Going forward is now the vigilance of us as trade unions, is the vigilance of Ministry of Labour, Gender and Social Development to do the inspections and make sure that these orders are really put into force. Yes.
Very profound.
But as for your house girl at home, of course that one is one person, but because he's working for you, we expect that there should be clear terms of engagement, including cover for a person that is working for you. For example, if you have a house girl at home, that house girl also needs to have a fallback after job, and therefore the social security must be guaranteed. So of the man that you are paying that house girl, make a deliberate saving for him or her, such that you also have a social security protection account. If there are issues of sickness, if there are issues of accident at home, make sure that there is a deliberate cover to help him or her through such cases. Go through the laws as they are provided, but you see the excuse has been, we are not formal, therefore if there is anything about occupational safety, it doesn't concern you, after all you're a house girl. Such is now not allowed. Yes.
Very profound, the things we learn and relearn. We are having a conversation on the welfare of workers, and in particular, the interest is with the relevance of the minimum wage in Uganda. Now, 0709602592 is the number for you to get in touch and share your opinion. Baleka Moses, General Secretary, National Union of Drivers, Cyclists and Allied Workers, says that thanks to all workers who participated in the Labor Day celebration at Nakapiripirita. I love the way you have abbreviated it as NACAPS. And you say that this is in regards to all workers, especially members, your members of the bus drivers led by Kakaire Umal Mo, our journalists who published everything. Baleka Moses, General Secretary, Drivers
Okay,
Union.
that is the Comrade Baleka Moses, is the General Secretary of Uganda Cyclists and Drivers Union.
Yes.
Thank you for hearing from him.
Indeed.
And he was at State House, he was also at Nakapiripiriti. I want to say welcome back from all those meetings.
Amazing. Let's still stay on the celebrations of the Labor Day event. The speech still stated that the workers were not represented on pertinent boards where decisions are made. What was meant by that?
You see, the sitrings of trade unionists and therefore the sitrings of workers is in participation, where we derive our energies to be able to contribute meaningfully to our workplaces, to be able to contribute meaningfully to the general economy of the country, is through our involvement and participation into what happens, especially the process of decision making. There are several bodies that have very serious discussions and decisions that they make regarding to working environment. Earlier on, such bodies, even workers, had involvement. But as we are going on, as we are evolving, in some areas they have been excluded. So very explicitly, such cases were brought out. Earlier, on the board of Directorate of Industrial Training, which is a body responsible for skilling, workers were having a participation. And the essence is that they have a core touch and feel of the program, and therefore that they should be able to cascade it to the members, share with them on the relevance for skills, share with them on the deficits of what is required at workplaces, and therefore where focus should be for us to have meaningful results at that board. But workers were excluded. So the demand here is that we need a reinstatement to continue being part of the Directorate of Industrial Training, because that is the hub where the workers' competencies are made. You cannot be preparing to make a competency for workers and you don't want their involvement. You don't want their involvement. So those are some of the examples. The other is the free zone. Free zone. Free zone is a docket that is speaking about opportunities for fair trade in Africa. And of course, fair trade has a connotation of manufacturing and the workers therein, has a connotation of trade and business and the workers that are in there. So in all these, in terms of the discussions that are happening at that level, in terms of the policies that are happening at that level, it is our view, and a very strong one, that workers must be very central. Because without them, we are likely to have such policies that are not pro-workers. We have had cases where we are promoting industrialization, courtesy of free zone arrangement. And now when these industries are merging, people are picking even on cheaper labor foreigners to come and work here. By the way, it was even brought out as a very distinct point. You get to a factory and you find a trolley driver is really a Chinese or a foreigner. And you are asking, is it probably true that through the land of Uganda we cannot have somebody who just do this forklifting machine operation? Why must it require somebody to come from India to just come and do this basic work? So even when the urge would be that through that free zone we are promoting industrialization, the essence of industrialization should be to provide employment to the locals. But now, even areas where the locals would really be a perfect fit, you're giving the opportunity to other people. So that is why it is important for us to have the discussion and the involvement of the workers such that they are part of the preparation, they are part of the journey, and therefore the voices, the aspirations are well located for. Yes.
Now, this is a message from Kakama George, who says, good morning once again. Thanks for the good conversation, moderator. Well, I'm a private employee, to be more specific, and a secondary school teacher working in Luwero district. I think talking about the fate teachers more, I think the fate of teachers more so as the arts teachers looks to be outdated in the face of the government. But I would personally request government to have a minimum standard for all workers, whether private or government. This is, he says, thank you. I'm Kakama George, born of Kashari North, Mbarara
I want to
district.
thank you, Mr. Kakama, for that. I think he's also underscoring the relevance of a minimum wage, and that has been a very good conversation that we are pursuing as trade unions. The good thing is that whereas we are not outrightly being offered that minimum wage, at least there is appreciation at the government level for our approach that we want it sectoral. There was an appreciation in that. There is also an appreciation that in pursuing to have a minimum wage, we want to have a rigorous tripartite engagement. Tripartite in a sense that we need to have a discussion between workers led by their trade unions, and then employers led by the federations for employers, and the government. And the government and the president was so much excited about that approach. So we think that when we intensify these, when we hold strongly to those very strong points, we can make a score. One, to have the tripartite, to have all stakeholders engaged. And then two, to look at it sectoral, in a sectoral manner. For example, imagine if you did a unilateral minimum wage declaration and said from now on, maybe no worker in Uganda should have a payment below 200,000 shillings. That 200,000 shillings would possibly make a good meaning to a housemaid.
Because as we
Because
speak
many
right
of
now,
them are earning 50 and all around that.
and the minimum wage, according to the International Labour Organization, is 6,000
You see?
for a Ugandan, which is...
But now, if you said the same to a teacher who is a graduate, remember now the proposition that is on table is that every teacher has from nursery, from pre-primary to whichever levels has to have a minimum of a degree. So if you're saying that the minimum should be 200, that does not speak to such a person at all. It does not speak to a journalist who has done all his classes and eventually gone into that professional training as a journalist. See that? So the reason, therefore, for why we need to have it sector by sector. And at least that has been appreciated. We hope that with the continued feedback from Kakama, I hope he's a union member, and others, we shall be able to really make this through. Because we need to be united, we need to be seen that we are very serious upon this, and we shall have it.
Now let me read one last comment before I go into the next question, and this is from Makerere Adimon in Kasese municipality. He says, how are trade unions seeking to address the skills gap existing in the employees for which their productivity is compromised and consequently wages compromised?
A very good question. How? Of course, through education and training. As we speak today, there are some unions that have done deliberate engagements to do these routine trainings. Routine trainings, either organized at the offices of the trade unions or in different areas, but also have some other trade unions that are moving to the workplaces and enrolling workers in big bulk. Just over this last ended weekend, we were having a graduation in DTI area at Steel and Tube, and over 80 workers were being graduated. It is giving opportunity to that person who possibly does not have any qualification now to have a practical qualification that relates to his work. And so when this person is seen as a profession, as somebody of excellent performance in his own docket, even his bargaining power increases. That is part of the approach. But also the other thing is what we just talked about. We said that in the ended meeting with HE, the president, we talked about deliberate programs for education and training, and even made an explicit pleading for government support towards those programs. At least there is a yes from the government. So we are hoping that going forward, when this all is done, when the support comes, we are going to have large-scale training, skills education, mindset education, for us really to have the orientation of belief, trust, and love for what we do. There are so many people who are in positions, but when you look at their commitment towards serving, really they have a very low morale. We need to awaken to raise up their morale, for them to have a sense of ownership, sense of love for whatever they are doing. A sense of appreciation that that thing that you are undermining, if you just change the attitude, it can be a better job, it can be better paying, and it could even be very joyous to you. Then also, the option of looking outside the box. I mean, well, you are at UBC and you are paid whatever you are paid. Maybe in life that shall never be enough. Even if they put, even the ED of UEB here could be aspiring for more pay, but perhaps is the most paid in the whole setup. Maybe. So we are saying that whatever you're getting and whatever you want to get may still never be enough. But if we look at other options, we are able to supplement to some of the desires that we want. The reason why we are also going to focus on issues of entrepreneurship promotion, issues of business mindset and practice among us as workers.
Very interesting. 0709602592. From what Mr. Juma Mwamula has explained, it looks like there's a lot of light. Sure. And hopefully all of this is implemented eventually. Now let's look at Uganda as part of the East African community. In your perspective, how does Uganda's labor protection compare with the rest of East Africa?
Labor productivity. Over time, we have had deceptive information, lies.
How so?
That Uganda is one of the most unproductive, or has the most unproductive workforce. And the comparisons have always been made that where you will need 5 Ugandans to do a certain job, only one Kenyan, would
yes.
do the same.
Yeah.
Where you would need about 4 Tanzanians to do a task, only 4 Ugandans to do a task, only 1 Tanzanian would do. But I think that has only been in a manner of misrepresenting our workforce and perhaps to cause more demotivation amongst ourselves. Research does not in any way reveal anything like that. Whereas it is true that our potential for productivity is still higher, we can do much better than where we are, but it is also not so true that we are as desperately poor as always has been indicated. Going forward is that there are deliberate programs. You would note, for example, that the Office of the President now has a skilling program. It has happened in most of the town hubs, conducted in community centers, in market centers. I have seen one at Makerere, what they call presidential skilling program. They are happening all over the country. The intention there is to give this Ugandan worker the real job need skill. If you're a tailor and you have been doing this job, you need to go and get that extra professional skill that first of all give you the competence to do the work so fast but also so accurately with precision. All this is happening and we have seen numerous graduates coming out as a result of that. Therefore, we are hoping that whereas we were not so good earlier on, but they are deliberate interventions to make ourselves better. And these programs are ongoing. Even the education sector, where I hail from in the education, our regular schooling has now been retailored, refocused to hands-on, and there is even award for practical work, award for projects. So even our learners right from early stages are being taught to have a sense of what really can you practically do, not what you can cram in the head, but what can you practically do. Schools are engaged into projects like maybe construction, like weaving, all those skills, skills around us. So at the end of it, we are going to have senior 4 graduates, we are going to have senior 6 graduates who are not necessarily professionals, but at least have a sense of what they can do after that span of schooling. And this is even going now beyond the schooling cycle, like we have those presidential programs. We are going to have on-job trainings. I've already told you that ourselves as trade unions, we are doing this. It would be a pleasure if at one point you people of UBC give us opportunities through our union here to come and have an interface with the workers of UBC in terms of the competencies you need for better delivery and other things. So at the end of it, our competencies will be built, and we are hopeful that through that approach, we will be able to have maximum competition. So the other adage that, I mean, we are the lowest productive lot, and you need so many of us to do a function for only one Kenyan, will all die out, and we shall have a competitive edge in the region.
So that means it doesn't refute the narrative, but at least right now something is being done.
It doesn't refute the narrative that our potential, that our productivity is low. We can do much more than where we are, but we are not as worse off as it has always been portrayed.
All right.
And yet, we are on a trajectory of improvement through these skilling programs, through our education curriculum now, and through so many other interventions. And I've just also said that very deliberately, we are going to have now a collaboration between the government and the trade unions and the employers to have very deliberate skills education and training. Because the employers would be able to tell us that for us in the factories of, say, beverages, these are the kind of skills that are very essential. So the focus would now be to make sure that whoever is coming under that skilling program is focused in that area, especially those who have intention to serve under that particular factory lot. So by the time they graduate, if they went, they are competitive, their production, their productivity is actually high.
Indeed, let's talk more on the issue of trade unionists engaging employers so as to, empower their employers. How easy has it been, especially with private sector players? With government players, it's quite easy, but with private players, there are intricacies sometimes that are not easy to pass by. Has it been that smooth? Have you been actively engaged with private players to be in their spaces, their workspaces, to empower their employers?
Over time, there has been misinformation that trade unions mean chaos. Chaos in a sense that they are coming to ask for unending increment of salaries for workers. And that is one thing, one wrong narrative that many employers bear out there. And so at the inception, there is always resistance. Many workplaces, many employers don't want to engage with trade unions. It's rare that from the point go, you will have a receptive employer who is welcoming. But in areas where trade unions, especially unions under National Organization of Trade Unions, have operated, in areas where unions under NATO have operated, the employers have come to waken up to say, so this is the match we have been missing all along. So these are the lies that we have been bearing in mind for all this long. When they realize that when unions come into a workplace, they are more of a developing partner. Because what we are doing as unions, we are offering free training to the staff. And the intent of staff training is to give them competence to do their roles better. So when these workers who were earlier unproductive are trained using union resources and are doing the work that you would be doing much better, then you would realize that you, as the owner of capital, or as the owner of the factory, as the employer, you're actually gaining much more than the unions. We are giving people exposure to start looking at life beyond where they are, for them to appreciate that whatever you think you are actually doing at your base, there are others who are doing much better. So come and have a look at how they are doing it. When you copy and this employer is flexible and is accommodative, and you bring these new lessons, then it is even to the betterment of the workplace. You improve, moreover, at free cost or at a cost that has been covered by the unions, and so many other things. So I would say that from the outward, we still have some employers who think that it is troublesome to relate with the trade union. And that has been because of the poor or wrong, the deceptive history, the wrong history, where many people think that trade unions are meant to pursue for only increment of salaries. But to those who are working with us have now appreciated. For example, where I come from in Uganda Private Teachers Union, we go to schools, give schools trainings that make them better teachers in their classes, by getting some of our own who are doing a little better, or who are coming from schools that are doing exceptionally well. So we bring these people to your staff. They teach them, they share with them on how they are doing it their way. And so if your teachers learn, adopt, and put into use, and you as the owner of the school facilitate the process, at the end of it, you are likely to perform like the other admired school. But all this at a cost of the union without your input. And yet in the situations where the schools have done such trainings themselves, they are being asked a lot of money. For us, we don't even ask a dime. Instead, we even pay them for attending our trainings.
Very interesting. Now, this conversation has to come to a close. Very profound and interesting, but I look forward to when we shall have you back to have this conversation more. But as you close, in your closing remarks, what lessons can Uganda learn from countries that have successfully implemented the minimum wage?
One is that we need to have a very calculated conscience on how we are going to approach this, because at least we have realized that there are some fears from the government on the subject of minimum wage. So we have to have a very rational explanation on where we are going to hang our minimum wage. But also to make sure that whatever is put forth as a minimum wage really has meaning to the different players of the economy. If we put a unilateral minimum wage, it may serve for a certain particular category of people, but also exclude those who are automatically way over and above. So therefore, we need to have just a little bit of reason, a deeper research, and the considerations for us really to have a better, broader picture. And when we have this, I want to assume that with the minimum wage, we shall have motivation, we shall limit the elements of exploitation by some employers, and therefore we may have a productive workforce going forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Juma Mwamula. Mr. Juma Mwamula is the Vice Chairman General at NOTU, and he's been here with us as we talked about the welfare of workers and in particular conversation on the minimum wage.
Yes.
That has been it from GNU, the agenda. Up next is the sports, but from me to you, catch you tomorrow, same time in the morning. UBC does continue to inspire you. Good morning.
Thank you.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon